And welcome to Primility Primer, our daily reminder about the importance of balancing pride and humility as we go through our daily lives, the power of balancing pride and humility as we go through our daily lives. I am your host, Jared Morris. This is episode 7, and I have an interesting story to relay with you today, and it's a story that I heard on a recent episode of This American Life, which was actually a replay from 2010, but it doesn't make it any less relevant now than it was when the episode came out. And if you want to listen to this episode of This American Life that I'm about to describe, go to primility.com/show/007 and you will find the link there. But it's the story of the NUMMI plant. And NUMMI was a joint venture manufacturing plant in Fremont, California, between General Motors and Toyota. And it came about in the early 1980s. And it was actually built on the site of a former GM plant, this plant in Fremont, that was pretty much renowned as being the worst, literally the worst manufacturing plant like in the world. It was absolutely terrible. And at this time, General Motors was starting to lose market share and starting to lose it relatively rapidly from their once proud perch atop the auto sales market, certainly in the United States. And it's interesting because early on in this episode of This American Life, they cite pride and defensiveness as one of the reasons, or as the two main reasons for why GM was really struggling, because they saw the numbers as temporary. They didn't think that the Japanese could possibly have some better manufacturing process than they did. And so pride and defensiveness really hurt them, caused them to not examine their own practices, find ways to improve, and things started to drop. Well, in the early 1980s, GM needed to build a smaller car, emission standard, something. Anyway, they had to start building smaller cars. They'd never been able to do it well. And this is something that Toyota was very good at. At the same time, Toyota was trying to get a foothold into America for manufacturing. They wanted to learn how to work with American workers, how that whole process worked. And that's how this strange plant in Fremont, California came about, the NUMMI plant, which was formed in 1984 on the site of this former plant in Fremont that had closed down in 1982 because it was so bad. And when they reopened it, it's not like they brought in a bunch of new people. 80% of the workforce was the same people who had been there before. So how then, in 2010, when the NUMMI plant was closed, had this plant produced 8 million vehicles of the highest quality when it was pretty much the same workers? And it was because of Primility, literally. Because what happened is that the workers obviously initially very much did not want to change their ways. And part of the problem with GM and the workers is there was a very antagonistic relationship between the workers, the union, and management. Management didn't trust the workers to do their job. The workers didn't feel appreciated or empowered. And it just created this rift that led to lots of grievances, workers not working hard, management not taking care of the workers, and it was just an awful situation. Well, when they reopened the plant in Fremont, the idea was that the Japanese were going to teach General Motors their manufacturing system, their lean manufacturing system built on this idea of Kaizen, continuous improvement, and teamwork, which was almost the exact opposite of what GM was doing. They tell the story of how it was just commonplace. They describe it as jail, actually, where guys would show up to work drunk. They would be doing drugs. They would be gambling. It just doesn't sound like a very good place to work. Well, the Japanese flew the American workers, the Fremont workers, over to Japan to put them into a Japanese plant to immerse them in this new way of doing things. And immediately the American workers saw the differences. They saw the differences in how the Japanese were manufacturing. You were allowed to pull the cord and stop the line if there was a mistake. Management people would be coming, team leaders would come around and ask if they could help, not just lambaste you if you made a mistake. There was camaraderie. People would rotate jobs to break the monotony and to learn how others worked. And the American workers saw this and they realized how much better it could be. And then a funny thing happened. A different kind of pride took over, And they actually say, one of the American workers who was over there is actually the one who explains this, that they looked at it and they were like, why can't we be doing this? You know, we can be doing the same things that the Japanese guys are doing, and we can make good cars. And it was this totally different kind of pride than what had hurt GM, because the GM, the big company pride that had hurt them, caused them to not examine what they were doing, that I mentioned earlier, wasn't balanced with anything. There wasn't any humility there to balance it. And so it just led to conceit, which led to no improvement, little self-awareness, and then you don't have the self-determination to dictate where you're going to go next. And that's why GM started to struggle. But this plant, the workers had this sense of pride, like, hey, we can do this. There's nothing special about these people that makes them better than us. They just have a better system. There's more teamwork here. And when that pride was combined with the humility of learning a new system, realizing there's a better way to do it, realizing that teamwork and actually caring about each other and caring about the product and quality, realizing that all that matters, you fuse those things together. Now this workforce goes to Fremont, and this NUMMI plant becomes this oasis in American manufacturing where things are actually done well. Quality matters, and good car after good car after good car gets rolled off of the assembly line. And you would think that this would then change everything, right? That now this is going to just sweep through GM. All of their plants are going to do this. Well, the second half of the This American Life story explains why this didn't happen. And as you might expect, there's a whole lot of unchecked pride, rampant pride, that isn't balanced enough with humility. And that's part of the reason why the lessons learned at NUMMI never really sweep all the way through GM like they could. The plant ended up closing in 2010 or 2009. This, of course, is when GM was really struggling. They had to pull out. Toyota pulled out. It was just reopened as a joint venture, or it was Tesla who reopened it. I don't know if it's a joint venture with Toyota, but it's back open producing cars. But it was really interesting listening to the story because they used the word pride several times. And it was funny because it was used in good context and it was used in bad context. The good context, the other word that was used with it was defensiveness. There was nothing to balance out the pride. And it shows what can happen when pride goes unchecked. It leads to this conceit that just isn't productive, isn't good for anybody. But the other type of pride, when it's combined with humility, when it's pride to say, hey, I can do this, but combined with a spirit of learning from other people who maybe do it better, and a spirit of teamwork and working together, now you've got this kind of magical feeling, magical emotion shared among people. And then when they work together, it's incredible what can happen. And the story of NUMMI, which I had never heard before listening to This American Life, is an incredible story. I highly recommend it. And certainly for our purposes of studying this idea of balancing pride and humility, and just as a reminder of the power of what happens when you balance pride and humility, it's an excellent story that provides an excellent lesson. So I recommend that you listen to the whole thing, and hopefully listening to it through this prism with this framework will help you get even more out of it. Well, that wraps up episode 7 of Primility Prime. I'm really glad that you joined me today. This is a fun story to tell, and I will continue to find these stories out there in the wild, bring them to you, and we will discuss them here. As always, I will be here tomorrow, 6:30 Central Time. Primility.com/show/008 is the URL. That's always where you can find me. If this is show number 7, then tomorrow's show will be available at the URL for 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever the next number is. And we will be here to talk more about the power of balancing pride and humility. I hope that that is an idea that carries you through today and that you have a wonderful day. And I look forward to talking with you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.